Thank you all so much for registering and coming to this event, Protecting Art Made by Real People in the Age of AI. This event is co-sponsored by the Porch, where I work, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly, as well as the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville. A special little shout out to Jonathan Harwell-Dye and Kate Gormley right there. Thank you so much. And in case you're not familiar, the Arts and Business Council, they are an independent 501c3 nonprofit leveraging and uniting unique resources to connect the arts and business worlds. They hold many events such as this, and in case you are here to get your CLE credit, there should be QR codes around the room to lead you to some resources, and at the very end, you will be asked to submit the form in order to get your CLE. So, and for everybody else who are just here for your own learning, enjoyment, and maybe you're from the arts world, welcome. Before we get started with our discussion, I wanted to take a few minutes to introduce myself, my organization, and then I'll introduce each of the panelists and give you a short overview of what you can expect in the next 90 minutes. We will be taking questions at the very end, so I encourage you, if you're taking notes or if you have something you are burning to say, just save that for the end. We do have time allotted for that. So, first of all, hi, I'm Yurina Yoshikawa. In case you don't know me, I'm the Director of Education at the Porch Writers Collective. We're based here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are entering our 10th year anniversary. And I see some of our Porch team members in the back, so say hello to them afterwards. The Porch, in case you haven't heard of us, we are a literary nonprofit organization. We offer writing classes, events. We also have our own literary journal. And we like to say that we're for writers of all stages and ages. We're a nonprofit and not an academic institution. The students who are coming to the Porch really are here to learn to be better writers, whether it's creative or professional. And we hire writing instructors with graduate degrees and lots of teaching experience. All in all, really, we offer a safe space for people, regardless of whether you've written anything in the last 10 years or not. You're welcome to take a class. And what's really beautiful about the Porch, and this is something that Carla, Christina, and I were on a radio show talking about recently, but you know, as a writer and writing instructor myself, this topic of AI and how to protect this art form from this threat, it has been on my mind. Just because, you know, we are entering a world where people can maybe use ChatGPT to input all of their materials and say, hey, write a memoir in the style of XYZ, and then it'll just generate something. The work we do at the Porch, you know, I feel like it's all about going through the messiness and the difficulty of writing, and it's also about the art of sharing, of empathy, of listening to different stories. Some people are coming into our classrooms for therapeutic reasons, to feel that their stories matter and to feel heard. I've seen people cry when they share their writing exercises, and that's kind of the magic of what we do. In that sense, I feel like AI does not threaten the work that we're doing. In our space, however, there is that general anxiety in the background, and I feel like this is something we cannot continue to ignore. We need to really think about it and discuss it with experts, and that's why I'm just so happy that we're doing this event today, and that we have 2 attorneys as well as 2 artists representing this. So I don't want to shine the spotlight on myself any longer, but I just wanted to let you know that that's where I'm coming from and the kind of space that I inhabit. How can we meaningfully protect human-made art? We're going to be discussing all the different facets of that. So I'm going to read off the bios of these esteemed panelists here, starting to my immediate right, Franklin Graves. Franklin is an in-house IP, media, and emerging tech attorney based here in Nashville. He's also an affiliated faculty with Emerson College's Business of Creative Enterprises MA program, where he teaches business and IP law. Franklin previously held legal roles at Eventbrite Inc. and Naxos Music Group. He also runs the weekly newsletter Creator Economy Law on LinkedIn, and regularly contributes as a freelancer to Passion Fruit, Tube Filter, and IP Watchdog as a means to educate creators and raise awareness of all legal aspects of the creator economy. He has been described by a colleague, I believe, as a rock star in the field, so thank you for being here. Next is Carla Christina Contreras. She is a professional actress, singer, director, producer, writer, and intimacy coordinator for film and TV. Recently elected as president of the SAG-AFTRA Nashville local chapter, Carla Christina here celebrates 30 years of service, volunteering for her union, and is currently a member of the National 2023 TV Theatrical Streaming Negotiating Committee for SAG-AFTRA, a union which holds over 165,000 members. Thank you so much for being here. Next, we have Lynn Morrow. People who work in this office will probably recognize her. Lynn is a partner and entertainment and news media team leader here at Adams and Reese. Oh, I forgot to say Adams and Reese. Thank you so much for hosting this beautiful venue. What a view. I mean, how do you get any work done when you have beautiful. Lynn, she represents regional, national, and international clients and advises and advocates for businesses that promote music and other forms of entertainment. Lynn helps artists, authors, songwriters, producers, music publishers, and independent record companies negotiate deals. She also works with nonprofit ministries with a music element, helping them to protect their intellectual property and content. Previously a litigator, Lynn brings courtroom and negotiation skills to her practice. Thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, Kelly McKernan, with they, them pronouns, is an independent artist based here in Nashville. We just found out we're neighbors. Direct neighbors, so 1 block away. Kelly graduated with a BFA in 2009 from Kennesaw State University in Georgia and have been a full-time artist since 2012. Original watercolor and acrylic gouache paintings are created for galleries, private commissions, and their online store where fine art prints and other products are also sold. In addition to maintaining a large social media following, Kelly shares tutorials and teaches workshops, travels across the US for events and Comic Cons, and also creates illustrations for books, comics, games, and more. As of 2023, Kelly is a professor of illustration at Nassau College of Art. So yeah, thank you all for joining us in this discussion. We also had a chance to do a Zoom chat amongst ourselves and gotten to know each other a little bit, but I'm really excited to dive into all sorts of things that each of us can bring to the table. So this 90 minutes, we are breaking it up into about 4 different sections. So first, we're going to just lay the groundwork, understand the landscape of where we're at with AI and art. Franklin here will give a 10-minute presentation to just get us all on the same page because the technology is moving so quickly. Sometimes we might just, be browsing the news and not really know where exactly we're at. So Franklin's going to just set us, on the same page with that. Then we'll give an overview of another legal aspect to this issue, followed by Carla Christina will share a slice of what SAG-AFTRA is discussing in terms of VFX in film. And then Kelly will share where they're at with the class action lawsuit, which is still ongoing today. Then we'll follow that with an artistic perspective. So we'll shed a light on Kelly and Carla Christina on how all of this is impacting real artists, real humans. When you think about AI and this issue, I just want you to remember their faces behind art. We are real people. And then we'll move on to the legal insights with Franklin and Lynn talking about where we're at. And this is where the CLE people can take rigorous notes. And then we'll circle back with some general questions for the entire panel and then come back to some general Q&As. We will have about 10 or 15 minutes allotted for that. So, are we ready, Franklin? Let me give you the clicker here. So, this is a little. There you go. Awesome. Take it away.
Thank you. Yes. So I think the next slide is a thank you slide. Yes, thank you to Adams, Reese, the Porch, and ABC Nashville as well. All right. So this is a 10-minute presentation. I'm going to try to keep it within 10 minutes. I normally do like hour-and-a-half trainings internally with my company as well. So I forgot to mention, full-time I work for HCA Healthcare. I'm on the technology legal team at HCA, one of 9 attorneys focused on healthcare and technology, and AI is, of course, a huge part of that. But a lot of my side work that I do and volunteer efforts are with creators. So yeah, an hour and a half, we don't have that, we have 10 minutes. And I think also it's important to recognize the experts that are in the room too, because a lot of you know more than you might think. So what I'd like to do, especially when I'm talking, well, most of what I'm gonna run through is what I've kind of solidified as the important stuff to be asking as I review contracts. So as I'm working with clients on use cases, or even last 2 weeks, I've been given the opportunity to talk with regulators across all the United States about it as well. It's been the importance of framing the discussion. And so that's where this bulk of this comes from. So I think even if like a lot of you might know this, it's important to also just reinforce your knowledge and to help you feel confident in having these discussions as well. With AI, there's no official definition of AI. AI has been around for a while. It stands for artificial intelligence, but it's basically technology that is mimicking the capabilities of humans. A subset of AI is machine learning. That's the one that we've seen the most explosion and growth in over the last year to 2 years, really 5 years or so. And it's been a whole slew of reasons why, mostly tech-driven. So cloud technologies, processing capabilities of computers, a massive amount of data that is now digitized, stored, and created on a daily basis, as well as historically. We're all creating data. So machine learning really kind of focuses on this subset of recognizing patterns in data. And examples that you all might already be familiar with is on your iPhone. That's a localized version of AI to your phone specifically, where if you're typing out a text, it will up at the top tell you or try to suggest to you the next word. You all know whether or not that is smart or not based on your usage. So I'll let you decide that based on email as well. Gmail has done this for a while. Microsoft does it in their Outlook as well. So that's one version, that's one flavor of machine learning. Natural language processing is another one. I work with a lot of YouTubers, and this is something that back when closed captioning, which is also like an ADA requirement, that's kind of what a lot of the developments in the creator space have been driven by regulatory oversight too. But one of those is the natural language processing, which takes a video that you upload to YouTube. YouTube will automatically generate an SRT file for you. That's a form of AI. That's a form of machine learning. And it is doing that based on the massive amounts of videos that people upload. As we go through this, we're talking about art, we're talking about artists, we're talking about creators. It's also important to think about the technology and the platforms that power distribution and what power they have, what capabilities they unlock for creators, and also what are the threats that they also may pose to creators. So that's one way where YouTube has become dominant in this area of closed captioning and subtitle creation. Computer vision is another one, whether it is something as simple as working with a PDF and clicking the OCR button. If you have an image that you scanned in a contract or you, whatever, the OCR basically turns it into where it's like highlightable and usable text. That is a form of AI. And so computer vision can go as basic as that, or it can go all the way up to something else where it's recognizing and identifying objects in a photo or a video, or facial recognition tracking, which is prohibited like under the EU law under certain circumstances. And examples in the creative space would be like IMDb, which Amazon owns and now has for a while now. When you pause, if you're watching a Prime Video or something, it'll show you who's in it. Some of that is AI driven. I think a lot of it is. As well as like being able to understand the music that's playing, things like that. So then another subset of machine learning is generative AI. And so generative AI is generation of new artifacts from pre-existing data and materials. And so it's all tied into models, and I'll get into a breakdown of this in just a minute. But examples of major model developers are Anthropic, Google with their Palm technology, their Palm model, Meta with their Llama, and then OpenAI, which has Codex and the GPT that we've all heard about. And then also services. So creator services integrate and have generative AI capabilities. Photoshop, I've played around with it. It's not that great. Like a lot of it is like really like cases, the best highlights from it. But my own experience is that we have a long way to go. But with Adobe, they're integrating what was Firefly, and they kind of built upon their Adobe Sensei technology they've been developing for a while as part of the Adobe service. So that's a service being provided to creators that might subscribe to Creative Cloud. Midjourney is another one, ChatGPT. GitHub Copilot, if you work with software development, that is the one that generates computer code or documentation that goes along with it. That's currently under a lawsuit as well. Disney for a while has, and you can go on YouTube and watch a video about it, their Disney lab, I can't remember the specific name of it, but they have a lab that has been technology research, all of that. They have an anti-aging tool that we've seen on the big screens as well. So it's important to understand, if we're talking about generative AI, what does that mean? Or are we talking about some other type of machine learning technology or AI-driven technology? Okay, so it's also important to understand what AI is not. So there's this concept called artificial general intelligence, AGI. It's kind of this theoretical point of reaching what's called the singularity, where AI develops a conscience, it can do human and just go out on its own, kind of like if you read the headlines about the world-destroying stuff, that's referring to artificial general intelligence. AGI, or a computer system that just gets out of control, all of that. It's also referred to as strong AI. We are not there yet. We're blurring the lines. We've arguably moved beyond what previously was called the Turing test, where it's hard to distinguish. Are you actually chatting with a human? Are you chatting with a generative chatbot that has generative AI technologies powered with it? Or are you calling into a phone system that now has a synthetic voice that can have a generative synthetic dialogue back and forth with you? So it's getting harder to tell, and lines are getting blurred, but I think it's also important to understand that we're not at this place where AGI exists, despite what Google engineers might come out of last summer and scream and say, oh, we're there. We're not there. Narrow AI is what we currently have. So again, this is also getting attacked to a degree because narrow AI means technologies that perform singular tasks. The way that the technology companies are developing artificial intelligence and machine learning and these generative AI tools and systems is moving us into a point where it's multimodal, is another term that you might hear, where it's not just text-based, or it's not just image-based, or it's not just voice-based. It's a combination of all these things. And throw them all together, and it's no longer just a single task that's being performed or a single service that's being provided or a system that's being developed. It is no longer narrow in that sense. So it kind of is, again, blurring the line into, well, is it general, is it AGI? Are we at singularity? And again, no. You might have heard the term data in, data out, or data in, garbage out, or whatever you want to call it. Garbage in, garbage out, yeah. So it just kind of depends on where you fall on that. But that's one of the other elements at play. Again, I try to break stuff down to explain like I'm a 5-year-old, because that's what lawyers I like to think are in the space. I like to pretend that I'm a 5-year-old and I want things to be understandable, because if ultimately it gets into a contract and nobody can understand it, that does a disservice. I know you know that after your work that you've been doing. And so from this standpoint, I break AI down into 3 buckets. And if somebody tells you otherwise, ask them to explain, and then please come and tell me so I can know. But so far this has held up in hundreds of negotiations that I've done. So 3 different buckets. You have the training materials. People call it data sets, training data. I prefer to use the term materials because, again, respecting artists and respecting creators and also respecting just the other types of information that might be contained in it. You have a database that might not just be raw data that comes from a sensor. Like think about your refrigerator, if it's an internet-connected refrigerator. That's creating data. That's being fed into a machine learning algorithm at some point. But that's not the same as if it's PHI in healthcare, or if it's a work that is subject to copyright, or if it's public domain, or if you have a license for it. And then, or if there are other rights that you're not even talking about right now. And then models. So earlier on in the early development of video games, Google would pit one AI against another to play a video game, StarCraft, what have you, and it would learn and it would become better. Chess, or you've probably read the stories about chess, that's how the chess model beat a human. So AI can be pitted against AI to achieve different outcomes. So that's the training materials. I always try to ask the question of what is being fed in, what's the model based on, what is the data set that if we're building our own model, where's the data coming from? There's something called data cards that explain all that with the risks, biases, all of that. Responsible AI initiative, if you want to dive into that further. In the middle, you have the tool, the model, or the system. AI can be a very narrow one type of tool or model that just does one thing, or it can be a system. Like if you're calling into, like I said earlier, a call center, and you're talking to a bot, it's going to be multiple types of AI where it's recognizing your voice when it asks you where you want to be transferred to. It'll recognize your voice, and that one way of turning your voice into something a computer can recognize, that's an AI model that powers that. And then the next step is, okay, then it will take whatever the computer was able to synthesize out of that, and it would run it through its own database to then determine what the answer should be or how it should route you. That's another type of AI. And then the next step of AI, it might give you a response back. That's a synthetic response, not a real human. That's another type of AI. So an AI system is also an important term to know, because it's important to get into the weeds of, okay, if I'm using one off-the-shelf service, how many different AIs are involved? How many different models are involved? Is it multimodal, like I was talking about? Those are the important distinctions there. And on the screen are just some examples. I already went through some of those on the last slide, but it's just examples of the models. And all of those come with their own legal considerations, policy considerations, regulatory, all of that. And then, of course, the last bucket is the output, which is what we'll also segue into. And just let's talk about the outputs of these. How is it being used? What is the output even? Is it a service of some kind? Does it route you a certain place within the company when you're trying to get customer support? Is it content of some kind? Are you consuming synthetic media, synthetic content? Is the news article that you're reading, like Sports Illustrated just got called out for it, is that actually written by a human? Is it data? So like in the healthcare space, we work with synthetic data. Differential privacy is what it's called. Machine learning helps to generate an output that is privacy preserving, so you can do research studies, like with COVID, like we were doing. That's synthetic data that no longer is attributable to an individual, so there's a benefit there to society being able to have that capability. And then automation, is it automating of some kind? And that's where we have a lot of existing privacy laws that already talk about robotic process automation or automated decision making with hiring and firing, credit decisions, things like that. And then, again, just to layer on top of there, some of the legal questions that I typically think through and kind of talk about, very pertinent right now, of course, with the dozen or so lawsuits that are going on the training material side. Is it fair use to copy training materials? If you're going to be building a mid-journey that is going to compete with artists, ChatGPT that can be used in a way that competes with creators or the market for that original work. And then the tool in the system, same thing. So not to be controversial, but there are artists, there are digital artists that have no issue with using these types of tools. There are marketing companies that are using these tools, marketing teams. There are basically every platform now, from TikTok to YouTube to Kajabi, if you're on there creating courses and selling courses online, they are offering tools that allow creators to implement generative AI within their workflow. So something that I've developed in collaboration with a company called Writer that offers a tool for that purpose is best practices. So if you are working with creators, if you are working yourself or your company with generative AI tools, what are some things to think about from a copyright output perspective as well? Because right now it's just considered public domain. You can't, in the US, you cannot claim ownership over the output if you're outputting text, if you're outputting images or anything else from these systems. The synthetic created data or output is not in the US. And most of the EU. UK is an exception, and Japan, China for now. So first is to establish guidelines and policies. You want to have guardrails around the use of it, what you can put into it from a privacy perspective or from other perspectives, but guidelines and policies are a must. And then second, evaluate on a use case. Everything comes down to use cases. So ask about the use case. And that was your negotiations too. What are the use cases? So is this content we want to protect with copyright? If it is, like evergreen materials in the marketing sense, lead magnets, things like that, workbooks, courses, you don't want those to be synthetic. You want those to be human authored so you can protect them, so you can claim ownership, so you can register it with the Copyright Office and then defend it in court. And the next step there, the emojis are kind of getting off there, but the next one is like maybe a yellow kind of hold and pause. Are there elements of the content that we want to protect with copyright? So this is where it might be helpful to use AI to ideate, to come up with outlines or first drafts. Like I said, a lot of the services provide automatic captions. They provide show notes for podcasts. Those are technically derivatives of the original protectable work. So you might not need to necessarily think, oh, I don't care about really protecting that from a copyright standpoint if it's not if it's machine generated, because I've been protecting the original work, and that's the value, and that's what I can use to stop people from using synthetically created derivatives, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the analysis there. And then does the content have a short lifespan? Again, this is controversial, but again, is it ephemeral content? Does it matter? Are you looking to do a quick blog post, social media post, all that kind of stuff, and then you might not care about the copyright concerns. But is it ethical? So I think I can stop there.
So again, we will take questions at the very end. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking of all these follow-ups to ask Franklin, and I certainly do as well. But, oh, did you want to?
Yeah, this is something else. I published this in an article that I wrote. And yeah, so this is a creation generation spectrum. So if you are working with creators that are utilizing AI of some fashion, it's important to identify where on the spectrum. So the top part, the black and white or gray scale there is a spectrum. On the far left, you're not using any tools. So like what we're doing right now, like for the people in this room, people watching later, we're using a tool. But for people in this room that are listening, there's no microphone. You're just hearing it straight from my voice. That is a performance. That could be protectable. But that's human created. And then once the recording's made, it's then made with a tool. So it would be human creation with a machine that is helping to solidify and document this particular talk that we're giving. But then also like a book could be written with Microsoft Word, Adobe Photoshop. Again, that was pre the Gen AI rollout they've been doing. And then you have Adobe Sensei. So then when you start moving into this right-hand column, or the right side of the spectrum, you got to start thinking about, okay, how much synthetic or how much machine-generated content is becoming part of the output. And that's going to matter because the Copyright Office may not register it. It may not give you a registration over it if it's too much. And so that's where they've established this thing called the de minimis test, where you have to determine how much is human-generated and it doesn't reach this de minimis threshold. And then, of course, the singularity in AGI is on the far right. So you might have heard about Dr. Stephen Thaler. He developed the Creativity Machine, and that he was one of the first people to try to register with the Copyright Office the output of his system. He actually emailed me and told me that I was wrong. He said that his system is the singularity, it's AGI. I politely disagreed with him. I like to share. I still think that even something like his tool and Midjourney are not entirely machine generated because you have the prompt, all this kind of stuff. So.
Thank you so much, Franklin. And I believe that these slides will be available to the people taking CL. And if you do the QR codes that you see around you, you can access this material in case you were having trouble getting all of it on your notes. But thank you so much for that. And just to, I might have some follow-up questions for you too, as we're talking about the artists, exactly where their work falls into what you were just talking about. And but that was really helpful, and I think that really lays the groundwork for all of us as we move forward. So next we have, apologies, there we go. Lynn, if you want, I'll just stay with the clicker, but you can, yes, speak to this.
Yeah, very simple. I have one slide, okay, until we get to the legal part, and then there's a bill that's being introduced for right of publicity in Tennessee that I want to talk about. But I'm going to be taking it from the angle of the music industry, okay? That's the space that I live in, and I look at this, and I've gone through a series of emotions in this year, because it's really this year I started paying attention to this, right? I think we're all new to the table. Some of you have been living in this space. I'm the one that called Franklin the rock star, okay? Was I right? All right, and he continues to write, and he's somebody you should definitely follow because he has a level of sophistication, not only on the technical side, but also on the legal side, which is great. Okay, fast moving, well funded. It's not going away anytime soon. It's only going to get better. It's only going to be more sophisticated. And here we are, you know, the music industry on the cusp of new technology, trying to figure out how people can get credit, how it can be monetized, how it can be corralled so it just doesn't run amok, if you will. So that's really what the focus is. And you've got songwriters and you've got artists that are concerned. And we'll talk about why they're concerned because of the capabilities of AI. And we've got content owners. We've got the record companies, and we've got the music publishing companies that care because their content is being inputted to create the new content. And so they're saying, wait a minute, what about copyright law? So there is this rub, and why is the music industry, why do we care about this? And I'm a lawyer. There's no way I'm going to come up here without a file. Come on. A file and a little paper. Okay, so this, I'm very proud of it. So the capabilities, there's three things we're looking at here. Because AI can compose music, right? It can compose music. It can enhance musical content that has previously been created by a human. And also, it can create sound-alikes. It can mimic an artist, okay? And I'm going to give you three examples. As far as composing music, this has been around for a while. I mean, even in 2016, there is a pop song that was inspired by training of the Beatles song, right? That was 2016. 2018. Has anybody heard of Taryn Sutherland, I think is her name? She's an artist, and she has this album called I Am AI. Her entire album, as far as the music bed, was created by AI. And she comes right out and says it, I am AI. And then she has original lyrics and her voice on top of that. Okay, so that is happening. And what is protectable for her? She didn't generate the music. She can't register that with the Copyright Office. But she can the lyrics, right? She can the lyrics. That is protectable. So we have that. That's been around for a while. That will continue to be a part of our lives. It enhances musical content. Let's talk about the Beatles. Let's talk about Now and Then. Who's heard that particular song? Featuring John Lennon, the deceased John Lennon. And Paul McCartney comes out and says, yes, we used AI because we enhanced his vocals. It was crackly vocals. It wasn't recorded with any real sophisticated machines, but AI was able to help us to be able to clean it up and put it out there, and it sounds great, and the video is unbelievable. If you haven't seen the video, definitely look at that. You agree with that?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then you've got the mimic, okay, as far as being able to mimic voices. And this is what's the most scary, not only to artists, but any sort of political figure, any sort of celebrity. And it is so spot on as far as the sound these days has become very sophisticated. So this really jumped to really the front of attention in I guess it was April or May, Heart on My Sleeve. Who's heard of that song where we've got the TikToker ghostwriter that put out this song, and it was inspired by the music of Drake, and he used AI to create vocals for Drake and The Weeknd, put them together as a duet. Okay, whose attention is that going to get? It's going to get Universal Music Group's attention, right? Because they own exclusive rights to record those two artists. It's going to get the artist's attention because apparently they don't like each other. They would never do a duet together, right? And for them to be put together, it's like, this is not cool. Anybody but him, right? So I've been told, okay, but from a pretty reliable source. And then, so we've got this tension. So here we go. We've got Universal Music Group, the gorilla, right, of the music industry, owns more content than any of the other majors, going, take it down, Spotify, take it down, all the, DSPs, which they did, but not before it went viral, and a lot of people heard it and thought it was the coolest thing, right? So we're kind of up against that. And then you go, okay, what are The Weeknd and Drake doing about it? Well, they've got a right of publicity, right, for use of their name, image, and likeness. And and we're going to get to this. I'm not going to go on too much about it. We'll get to where the legislation is happening or not happening in this particular area. But those are just some of the general concerns that the music community have, artists, songwriters, content owners.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lynn. And we are going to circle back to this next slide in a future segment when we're talking about the legal insights, but we're going to skip over to talk about what's going on with SAG-AFTRA. So Carla, Christina, you provided us a video. When I click the next one, it's just going to start playing. So
Okay,
did you want to give a context?
Yeah. So, how many of you are familiar with our strike? Were you watching any of that? Okay, so I was out in Los Angeles. We, for 6 weeks, the AMPTP was playing games with us, and the day before our extension, they handed us their AI package the day before. How could we finish?
Yeah.
We knew right then that we were going to have to go on strike. So then, of course, the strike happened, and little by little, we went back again, came back home, then we went back again. It was all about AI. A little bit about our bonus structure, but mostly AI. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We just couldn't seem to get to the place that we wanted to get to. So then once we were done and we had our tentative agreement, then the union members, fear came in and fear took over. And so what was happening is we had one negotiating committee member that went rogue, went to CNN immediately, did some things. So then what we started to do is the video that you're going to see is very short. It's about 4 minutes.
40 seconds.
Oh, 40 seconds. Okay, so we've cut it down. It's not great quality, but it's hosted by the member Bob Globerman, and then it's a VFX supervisor, Robert Netterhorst.
Sorry, I did that.
Whoops. Anyway, SAG-AFTRA has been studying this for at least 10 years. Jeff Bennett is our main attorney, and he has a full staff that has been studying AI on our membership behalf. We also do have some legislation that has been filed. It hasn't been passed yet in California. I'm not sure nationally. But had our membership been somehow shown what you're about to see, I believe that we would have had a higher ratification. Our agreement was ratified. Thank you. Because I now have my life back. But this was really interesting of what you're going to hear of the cost. And to me, that is one of, and they also will tell you, I think in this, that we're not that close yet. We're getting there, but we're not that close to where they're saying 5 to 10 years. Go ahead, whoever has control.
Next question is, how much does this cost?
So this cost varies, but for a reasonable likeness at a median level, you're looking at the mid 5 figures to low 6-figure cost to recreate you.
So again, that is for one digital double.
Mm-hmm.
Up to 6 figures for one digital double.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, what that doesn't even put you in the movie. That just makes a copy of you. That's before you go into the movie. To go into the movie, and again, I got this whole flow chart. It's crazy. We can skim it. But we have a whole bunch of other processes that need to happen even once we've done a reasonable recreation of you. And all these things, the director is very involved.
So one of the main things that was the most important thing that we did get was that, sure, AI's been happening for a while. I was in the tech world back in the late 90s. CGI came to be. We started watching cut and paste of background actors for big, football stadium type stuff. Once we were able to get consent, that was a miracle. To be able to get that and then compensation. So now what we have is you can be approached and they'll say, okay, you're going to go in and we need you to get scanned. We saw what happened with Carrie Fisher. So that was the only way that they were going to be able to finish the movie. I don't have the numbers of what that ended up costing them. But the other thing is, as an intimacy coordinator, when I set up with my actors the areas of their body that they don't want shown, or, you know, could be the side, could, you know, whatever it is, that also is for the digital double. The digital double, because they have to give consent if they don't want to do it, but they can let the digital double do it. But most of the time, no, because people, you know, their parents, whatever, their children, they don't want things seen. So what's really interesting is that I can be scanned and then my digital double can go to work, but I'm going to get paid. Whereas before, we weren't going to get paid. They could scan us and use us, and they wanted us in perpetuity, but they're not getting that. So it was a huge, huge gain.
And in the video too, just to clarify, right now the technology is at the point where it would take 6 to 7 figures just to copy them.
Right.
And that's before the cost of putting them into a film, making them act. So
Right.
it would be an enormous cost.
And the other thing is he says later in it that every time you change your clothes, you have to be scanned again. If you gain weight, you have to be scanned again. You lose weight, you have to be scanned. There's so many scans that have to be done that it really gave our membership, while we were in the middle of the ratification vote, and we were just passing it, the negotiating committee, we were passing this video around over and over because we're like, look, see, we did our job for you. But he also said in 5 to 10 years, and you can back me up on that, it will be in a much more precarious place.
So say we talked about with the Tom Cruise.
And cheaper.
Cheaper. Anyone on their phone or their computer at home can do this. Like we see with the Tom Cruise examples on TikTok. Like if you've not seen those or whatever, like it looks real. And I think that's the issue. Like for high value budget films, TV shows, they care. But at what point in the creative process or the bad actor process does that fall away? And is it just good enough?
Right, and the thing is we were negotiating for what we call the journeyman actors, the actors who their faces are not familiar faces, like myself. The big stars, they've got their big teams of lawyers and managers who are doing the work for them, but the everyday, not known actor who might have one word on set or a couple of scenes, those are the ones that we were mainly negotiating for to protect. So it was a big deal.
Well, thank you for working on behalf of artists, Carla,
Sure.
Christina. And speaking of artists, let's hear from Kelly. I'd love for you to share with all of us sort of where you're at right now with the class action lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm Kelly, and I joined a class action lawsuit earlier this year in January of originally 3 artists, including myself, Sarah Anderson, who is Sarah Scribbles, she does comics, everyone recognizes her work, and Carla Ortiz, who is a concept artist for Marvel and also an illustrator and fine artist. And we joined this lawsuit on behalf of artists whose work was scraped without consent, compensation, or credit for AI art generators. So we are suing Stability, Midjourney, DeviantArt, and now Runway. We recently had an amended complaint that added 7 more artists. So we have now photographers that have joined, more comic artists, more concept artists, and illustrators. And in the amended complaint, we added Runway as a new defendant. So the reason, we are suing is because all of this work was taken through the Lion 5D data set, which has 5 billion images to text pairings. Yes, with over 1 billion of those images were artwork. And so what happened in my case specifically was over 50 of my paintings were scraped off of the internet through sites like Pinterest, through DeviantArt, places where I didn't even upload my art, other people did. with my name attached, and then so someone could go into a program like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, type in my name. I want, for a real example, somebody wanted to see a portrait of Prince in my style, so they wrote portrait of Prince in the style of Kelly McKernan. And then it would generate an image in my style that looked like Prince. And this happened tens of thousands of times. There are over 12,000 public results in Midjourney alone of people using my name to generate synthetic imagery in my style. And I believe there's tens of thousands more examples that we don't know about yet. And that is a problem because not only is the internet being flooded with images with my name now attached to them, and no longer that's not my work, but it's as you know, a couple weeks ago showed up as the very top image result under my name was an AI image I did not create. This is an issue because I'm an independent artist. I don't work with any studios. I do everything on my own terms, and the reason I do that is so that I am in control of how my work is used, and I am in control of the profit that I make and therefore make a living off of. I'm very sad to say this year I stopped being able to make a living. I believe that AI is a part of that. The internet is now flooded with synthetic images created with the work of artists like me, and it is drowning us out. I have learned that many of my peers who have also been full-time artists for many, many years, some of us over a decade, also no longer making a living off of our work. There are publishers, book publishers, comics, stock, all of it are starting to move to generative AI instead of hiring real human artists. This is a problem. So that's a big part of why I'm part of the lawsuit is that we're seeking damages, but we're also seeking solutions. We want to see artists paid for the work that we have unwittingly put into this new technology. We want credit, and we want to give consent. Right now, a big part of the fight is opting in, which should be an option to opt in to be a part of these programs. It is currently not. We have no choice. And right now we're fighting for a future where artists can opt in by choice, get paid, maybe a Spotify model, I don't know. And that itself is a huge fight right now. So the lawsuit itself is tackling a lot of things. The input being, which we saw earlier in the slides, the data, the images, our names, the method by which that stuff is used, diffusion models and how all of that works. Some of it's still a black box. We're hoping to find out in the discovery phase what's actually happening. And then the output, are these works derivative? Are they copyrightable, et cetera, et cetera? Right now they are not. So we're trying to tackle a lot of issues, and we expect that our lawsuit it's already historically the biggest copyright lawsuit in history because we have been given the green light to go forward with stability into the discovery phase. Our judge, Lynn Morrow, 9th District in Bay Area, San Francisco, had dismissed some of our complaints earlier this year, but he gave us basically a roadmap for exactly what we needed to provide him, which we've now done. So our next court date, I think, is in March, and hopefully we continue to move on, but this was year one, very wild, completely changed my life overnight. I'm sure we have a few more years to go. But that's the fight that I'm a part of, representing myself and many, many artists in the exact same position where, I've been able to cultivate a career where I can support myself, and I'm a single mom, I have a kid to support with my work, and the last year was just an indication of how much harder it's about to get, so we're really, really fighting.
Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm just so sorry that this even happened. But it sounds like this class action lawsuit. I love that more artists are joining in, and I encourage you all also to follow Kelly's work, which is fantastic. And thinking about the artist perspective, I was wondering, you are currently teaching in an institution of young artists, is this also on their minds? Like, how are you in that space trying to encourage new artists to come in this new landscape? Is that something that's affecting?
It's absolutely come up. Part of why I'm now teaching. Well, I have a background in teaching already, but at the college level, this is new for me. But I, in kind of losing sense of where my career is going, I wanted to work with younger artists to at least, work to try to get them the same opportunities that I've had. I'm working with freshman students, and one of the first things we talked about on our very first day of the semester was let's talk about ethics and creating art. Where are you sourcing your reference? How are you sourcing it? What are you doing with the work? And also let's talk about AI images and the ethical issues there as well. Some of them are really concerned. Some of them don't know where it's going to go. I'm very, very concerned for them because already there's a class of young artists who are just trying to break into the industry and cannot because those jobs are now going to generative AI. There are prompt artists replacing whole teams of artists on things like, for example, Marvel has a show, what was it called? Secret Invasion, where the intro was entirely made with generative AI. And instead of having a whole team, of 6 to 8 artists working on that, they have one dude just typing in stuff. So this is already happening. There's, I'm seeing this effect where I work with a lot of musicians. I make album art and other things of that nature. And they are moving to AI because, they would so much rather pay somebody $15 to make an image than say like $800 for a real piece of art. And it's already happening. It's only been a year. So I'm really concerned, and I'm kind of this two-part fight in trying to work with the younger generation to make sure, like, how do we navigate this? How do we continue this legacy of artists moving forward as illustrators and contributing instead of losing valuable work to synthetic images?
And that's really insightful for me as a writing instructor too. And I know a lot of our students are adults, but we also have a youth program, and if they're growing up in a world where ChatGPT is accessible, I think we're going to face those same concerns. For the sake of time, we're going to move forward back to Lynn's slide. Lynn, would you speak a little bit to us about the state of things in
Yes.
right now? And let me, I think it was, sorry about that.
Let's
There
just
you go.
talk a minute,
Yes.
and then Franklin, you're going to talk about some cases. But I just wanted to, first of all, I feel, it's just like, it is so tough because I look at just independent artists and how, when you look at the digital service providers, your Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, there's like 120,000 tracks uploaded a day, masters. And a lot of them have artwork attached to them. And they're just quickly going and doing something that is inexpensive, fun, they think is fun, it's catchy, and they move on without giving it another thought. Okay, so it is happening, and education, starts with education. So I think I commend you for doing that and just instilling in people, because I do what I do because I want creative people that are gifted to be able to do and make a living doing what they're gifted to do, right? And so that drives me. Okay, getting back to the law here, and it has to do with right of publicity, all right? So this is what happened. Remember I told you as far as name, image, and likeness, okay? So if you're taking, that goes into voice, that goes into sound alikes, okay? So if The Weeknd and Drake do have a claim, right, against ghostwriter because it was mimicking their particular voices. There is no federal, and it's under the umbrella of right of publicity. That's what the legal buzzwords are called. And there is no federal right of publicity, okay? It's not a federal law. It's state by state. Every state has its own laws with respect to the right of publicity. And that includes Tennessee, okay? And right now, Tennessee's law is, okay, you've got a right of publicity, while you're alive, and then when you're deceased, it goes on for 10 years. And then after that 10-year period, if it's non-use, okay, no commercial use for 2 years, then you lose it. It goes away, and it's in the public domain. Okay, so that's why, people like Elvis Presley were residents of Tennessee. That was a good thing, when he passed away, because he's under that protection, and they keep using it, so it's extended well beyond 10 years after his death. But there is a bill that is being introduced, and trying to make artists and creative people aware of it, in that they feel like, if I were to read you the Tennessee statute, the Tennessee Code Authoritative, or whatever it's called. Phil, you got to help me with that. TCA, it's very short, okay? And so they want to expand it because of AI and have a little bit more teeth in it. So that bill has been introduced, okay, on a state level. That Tennessee feels like it should be leading the charge because of all the creative people in this town. And you can read, this is in the materials as far as, how many billion, my eyes aren't good, 3-point-something billion dollars, revenue each year to the music industry. So we care about this very much. Also, Universal Music Group, boy, did they catch fire, after Ghost Rider did what he did. And they have been lobbying Congress to have a no fakes bill, okay? They want a national, they want a federal, that to legislate on a federal level right of publicity, okay? So it goes across all states. I don't see that happening, in my opinion, anytime soon, okay? It's one of those things where Congress has so many big ticket items on their plate that this may get shoved down, right? And just letting the states like Tennessee come and legislate that way.
Thank you so much for, putting us up to speed on what's going on in our own state. And it makes sense that Music City being here, that Tennessee would be in the big push of that. Franklin, I was wondering, having heard from the artists from the Hollywood side as well as the visual art, what are some key, and you might have covered this as well in your slides, but just to think in terms of what are some key legal considerations for artists such as themselves or even artists in this room? What are some key legal considerations for artists navigating copyright in today's age of AI?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough question because if you're using these tools, it calls into question the ability to own anything. So there is a mixed bag of up-and-coming artists or just anyone that uses Photoshop these days. You can't not have access to these tools or maybe use them purposefully or unintentionally. And so that's the part where it begs this question of, okay, from the beginning, it's important to plan out what your intentions are and what your narrative is. And I think, so far with the U.S. Copyright Office, there have been 4 attempts to challenge the review board. So within the Copyright Office here in the U.S., we have this thing called the review board that reviews decisions by the Copyright Office to deny or grant an application for copyright protection when you apply. And so within that review board, you can challenge. If the Copyright Office denies, you can challenge, or the creator can challenge. We've had 4 of them so far that have gone through. A couple, it goes back and forth two times to request, to review, and then by the final time, you have the final decision of the Copyright Office. And I think the most recent one's interesting too, because The one, and you can read them on the Copyright Office website, and we can share them afterwards too.
They have a great website. I
Yes.
really think they have a strong website, our
They do.
Copyright Office.
Actually, it's
on
just
AI.
copyright.gov/AI.
Yes, and
And
you've
that's
got
where you
that
can
in your
go.
materials too. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's where you can go and find all this. But the most recent one is interesting to me because, to your point, as a creator, you have to know your narrative, especially if you're using these tools up front. Because the most recent one, the Copyright Office calls out this digital artist for the use of their tool. They used a custom developed tool because they did it back in 2020. I think it was an Indian artist based from India. And they were using their own tool, and they kind of mix their messaging. They flip back and forth between whether or not they truly have this layer of control over the tool that's being used. And that is the foundational element of what the Copyright Office is looking for in most of these cases, is how much control does the author have, the creator, over the end result of the product.
Is that what like Kelly was talking about in terms of opting in? Like if there's artists who in the future, once we have some standards and guidelines, if an artist would like to opt in to maybe they see some creative beauty in their work, being fed into AI, but that will be an option. Or for artists to say no. Is that sort of
Getting at that, right?
Okay.
And you have major companies like Adobe that have Adobe stock, and they used Adobe stock to train their models that power Adobe Sensei and power Adobe Firefly. And it begs this question, and you probably have thoughts on it, Kelly. Is that truly given? Like, if you're just because you're uploading something to Adobe stock and their terms allow them to do this, did you consent? So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to add, a lot of Adobe stock is made with products like Midjourney. And if you go in there and you search their stock for any artist name, including mine, there are images that come up that were made with AI, and Adobe says that actually, we own that, and now you can just make stuff with it. So I on one hand am calling that unethical.
Right. So I think what you're saying is like a lot of damage has already been done.
And Adobe, I can go on about Adobe. But Adobe is very big on, they're trying to get legislation passed that says, well, we just made the product, if you want to sue somebody, sue the person who made the image. So they're trying to wipe their hands clean. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Well, just that right there is a prime example of what's called, in the early days of the internet, in the 90s, we had this concept of internet exceptionalism. Do we need to have nuanced laws that target the advent of the internet? And so that's where we ended up after court cases. We ended up getting Section 230 of the DMCA, which protects service providers like eBay to Facebook from hosting liable defamatory content. They're not liable. Same thing on the copyright side of the DMCA, that came around because it was, again, taking away the platforms from liability from them for hosting user-generated content that might be infringing on someone's copyright. And so we have this AI age of exceptionalism is kind of what I'm seeing, where it's this question of, well, if Adobe is creating a product and putting it out there, should they have guardrails in place? And I think it's interesting because I use ChatGPT just to play around, and I have ChatGPT 4, and I can no longer prompt it with the name Warhol to generate something.
Right. Mine has been removed from a lot of these programs because I'm part of the lawsuit, but everyone else's names are still in them. So
they're adapting the product to remove liability from themselves, from a privacy right, and from a name image likeness.
So, looking back to our topic of today, how to protect human-made art, there was an interesting question that one of the audience members posted to us. Do you think we'll end up having an official stamp on non-AI generated art, whether it's visual art or writing, etc., or even acting? That's similar to when you go to a grocery store and you see food produced and sold that's non-GMO. Do you think, is that part of the, so first of all, two questions. For the legal aspect of it, is that, a possibility? And from the artist side, is that what we want?
I keep thinking, who's going to do the red carpet? Who's going to do the Comic-Cons?
Right.
Who's going to do celebrity? I mean, sure, at a certain point, I'll bet you, I'm thinking, these little generated things could come out. I don't
As
know.
holograms
Or something.
Or the next generation just engages with them digitally because they don't care about it.
And there is an audience who loves that. Okay, so that can be for them, I guess. I don't know.
As long as you get paid.
Right. And of course, you know, we have the digital replica, the digital double, the digital, I mean, it's ad nauseum, all the different ways, and they're still coming at us. So when we were negotiating too, it was like we were trying to figure out from every perspective with the people who were actually AI, they really knew what they were talking about. We were trying to find every avenue, but every avenue, there's 44 of us on the negotiating committee, but there are thousands upon thousands out there creating. So it's, and I know that there's also, I believe there's a lawsuit having to do with all the movies that are being fed into this, all of the creative IP that's been fed in, like music as well, to be able to get AI where it's going.
So I can jump on that a little bit. So I actually, it's funny, I started seeing myself and some other artists, traditional artists, rebranding ourselves as slow artists. Organically made. I do a little tongue in cheek, but I don't think it's going to be that funny anymore very soon. So I'm personally hoping we see synthetic imagery require a watermark that says that this is AI generated artwork or images or AI generated whatever. But currently I don't think there's really any indication. It's getting very, very, very hard to tell what's AI generated and what isn't as far as images go.
Lynn, do you have anything to add in terms of the legal side?
Yeah, and Franklin, feel free to jump in on this, but doesn't YouTube already, I mean, their new policy is we're going to identify if there's artificial intelligence used in this particular video. So they're starting to label artificial intelligence on videos, and they're not saying don't use it. They just want to make sure that if I'm going to view a video of the inspired Beatles song, that I will know that AI was used to create that music.
Right, and so there are different buckets to think about it, and platform liability is definitely one of them. In terms of whether it's kind of, I love talking about it because it's this interesting intersection where the platforms are not only hosting content that could be uploaded by a user that's synthetic in whole or in part, but also they are now rolling out tools that allow creators within their ecosystem, like on LinkedIn, you can help quick start, generate a post, and either post it as is or edit it further. And to me, I think the platforms have an obligation, that's my own personal opinion, to disclose that, especially when I think about it from the context of I'm on LinkedIn to engage with thoughts of other professionals. That are human thoughts, it's that human connection in the digital space. Don't laugh at me. But that's kind of where I go to it from that perspective. But then it does beg the question of if you zoom out to other platforms, where then do you draw the line? How much of AI-assisted creation is necessary to disclose? It kind of goes back to the Copyright Office too, of like there's no clear line. It's hard to tell if you were using it to help a minor tweak of something of some kind, or a filter, or my iPhone, I take a photo. It's using machine learning to improve that photo just automatically.
I'm also thinking about like the press junkets for, feature films, and so where does journalism go from that point? Where you have the journalist that is interviewing the star that's in the film or the television show. Where does that go? I mean, it just continues.
Where's the glamour?
Yeah. Well, definitely where's the glamour, but if it's all machine made, boring. From my perspective for now.
Well, I think if you've gone to, I work with creators, I've spoken at VidCon, which is like a huge organization and annual event where creators come, and they're doing it now at Baltimore and other places. The desire for younger teens and even not teens to meet face-to-face with their creators is there. But I think it does beg the question of, as you move into more synthetic content like VTubers or completely virtual avatars, where does that leave that type of engagement with fans? Yeah, and then with consent, it's like if I do a film and they scan me and then I couldn't produce the tier that they wanted, I have to give consent that they can put it there. So that gives us a lot of power.
I want to just take a minute to think about the flip side of this too as an artist, and this is something Kelly and Carla and Christina can maybe think about, but has AI and all of this influenced your creative process at all? Or I like how you talk about slow art, or the art that's not, but I was also thinking back to Franklin's slide and how even Microsoft Word, is a machine tool that I can only write my work on a laptop now. I don't really slow write much, and I'm thinking about how AI might be used or already being used to finish my sentences sometimes. But Kelly, has this impacted your creative process?
Yes, definitely in some ways. I also wanted to add that I'm not anti-AI. I just want it to be ethical. There was a time where I was excited for what we now have, because I thought that maybe I could input all of my own art just for me and find out what kind of patterns the program discovers for me. Like maybe hear some, the symbolism I use all the time, and it would point that out to me, like, that's making me think about why I use this all the time. I was looking forward to that, but I wasn't looking forward to other people being able to do that. But how it's changed my process is, honestly, I could not paint for months when this started. I lost all interest in creating. I just felt disempowered. I felt like, over 50 of my paintings had been violated. It felt horrible, and it just made me feel like, why should I make anything else if it's just going to be scraped and used to replace me? Because that's what's happening. And it took a while to find the desire to create again, and now I do find myself approaching creating a little bit differently. I'm enjoying more of the process of creating, and I've been putting a mirror up to my process and the human aspect of it, and why it's so important to preserve and pass on to future artists. Because my worry is that there's a future where there are synthetic artists who want to call themselves that, but have no understanding of how to create or the principles of design or any of this stuff. And so I just want to be a part of, preserving that and celebrating it, and hopefully, encouraging future artists to get hands-on. Like, don't skip the line just, to create a synthetic image for the, for the fame or whatever. Yeah, it's changed my process, and it still is changing my process, but I'm certainly a little bit more focused on the process side than the final image in my own work.
For me, I did a survey with the negotiating committee, and I also did a survey. We have 25 locals across the country that include LA and New York, and I'm on a text string with many of the leadership, and I asked them, how many of you have been scanned? And in the regions, there was no one who had been scanned. In LA and New York, as you rise up into celebrity, those are the ones with the larger roles that are going to make a true difference in the production if something happens to them, i.e. Carrie Fisher. They've been scanned and they've been scared, and I don't know that it's really changed the process. I mean, for me, if learning lines could get easier, but that's not going to apply because as you get older, that gets harder. But right now, no, I don't think that it's really changed our process. I think it's more changed, am I protected? Am I protected, and can I still earn a living at what I love to do? So, yeah, but as we get closer, that answer might get different.
And before we open it up to the Q&A of everyone in the room, I just want to offer one last chance for everybody here to go around and just say, like, if there's one burning thing that you're hoping that everyone will take away from your presence here. So we can start with Kelly and come down to Frank.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that since we are talking about protecting artists in the age of AI, there are a couple of tools. There's one tool called Glaze, where you upload an image to this program and it essentially cloaks it with a different style than your own art. So that if that image is scraped, it's not reading your work, it's reading something different. And Glaze, the people who make Glaze, a number of people at the University of Chicago, have a version called Nightshade, which is coming out, I think, later this week, where you're not only cloaking it, but you're poisoning it. So if that image is scraped, and if there's a bunch of it, it doesn't work like just on one, but if you say have 100 images scraped that are poisoned with Nightshade, it attacks the data in that data set. So it's really, really exciting. I'm so excited about it. I cannot wait. And now that there are tools like that, I feel better about sharing my work online. And I'm excited for some more protective, adversarial options until we have more control in our space. I'm excited about that.
Lynn?
Yeah, I was just thinking that I saw a presentation earlier in the week by the RIAA that represents the recording industry, and they have kind of 3 C's, and I heard you touch on it.
Yeah.
And their 3 C's is that you've got to give me the 3 C's.
Consent, compensation, credit.
Consent, credit, and compensation. Okay, so if you're going to go out and use somebody's name, likeness, image, voice, go and get their consent. Okay, and whether it's the estate if they're no longer alive, but get their consent, because some people will give it to you. Okay, will license it to you. And so you've got, the consent as far as credit, and then also compensation. And the compensation is the big one. I just, I'm proud that you're going and using the legal system. I'm a lawyer. Some of us in this room make their living through litigation, but it's a slow, painful process. And if we can figure it out, and make sure our creative folks get compensated. We're making sure that people are licensing and paying for the content. We're going to be in a better place. And there's a lot of smart minds, including everyone around this table, working on it. Okay, and so I'm remaining encouraged that we're going to put some guardrails around it and figure it out.
Carla, Christina, and Franklin. Quick nuggets from each of you.
Okay, so I just think pay attention when you're on your own Facebook pages. Think about what you're letting get uploaded. When you say, yeah, go ahead, make that cool image of me, you've just given yourself away. So, no? I didn't do that. I chose not to.
My quick thing is encourage you to use these tools. Don't be afraid of trying them, seeing what they do, because then you will be in a better position of understanding, is it going to truly impact the work that I myself do? And I, as a writer, freelance writer, it will not. I've already found that. And I think then for all of you, it'd be important to, if you haven't already, know what you're up against, or know what you're arguing against, or know what you're arguing in support of. And to do that, use them. And don't be, that's my personal opinion, if you take it or leave it, but that's how I become more educated on it.
So thank you to each of you for that. Let's open it up to questions. If you can just raise your hand, I will point to you and we'll take it from there. Go ahead.
Well, Kelly, I wondered how you chose the defendants in your case, and if there's a link to the case, so that we have the case site we can share. I was just checking the materials, I didn't see it.
Oh, sure. StableDiffusionLitigation.com has all the court documents. StableDiffusion.com.
Okay.
Our lawyers are the Joseph Saveri Law Firm and Matthew Butterick. They are all working together. They're also representing the GitHub Copilot lawsuit and also Sarah Silverman's lawsuit against OpenAI and Meta. So our lawyers are working on all 3 of these lawsuits in these 3 different arenas of the creative field. So very excited for all the information I know they have access to. And then the defendants. So I did not have anything to do with choosing the defendants. I only had input, but I'm one of the reasons they're suing DeviantArt. Because DeviantArt basically took all their users' art as data to put into their generator called Dreama. And artists like me who have been on that platform for over 20 years, like literally everything I've ever put online is on my DeviantArt account. And it felt like a massive betrayal to the artist community. Yeah. And I was, for one of these artists, very upset about this. So I did have some input in this, and every step of the way our lawyers have been asking, you know, what we think. Actually one of our plaintiffs, Carla Ortiz, has been working on the legislative side as well, getting in front of Congress actually with UMG, asking Congress, Marsha Blackburn was part of this panel too, to also get protections in place. So our plaintiffs are very eager to get something done.
Yeah, so it's like we're back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Everyone has a domain name, but the one for GitHub is githubcopilotlitigation.com as well. But there is a website, if you want to just remember one in particular, as a professor, a law professor that has one, ChatGPT is eatingtheworld.com. That one has an entire listing of all the different cases that have been filed. It's a great resource, and I recommend that one. And it has links to all the court filings and everything. The one thing I would add, I think I can make an educated guess. I obviously have no connection here to my own personal opinions, but to the why behind why some of these defendants have been selected is because if you look at the filings, the original complaints, a lot of it touched on early research papers that were put out, like the Lyon data set. It came out of Germany, and early, again, 5-6 years ago, these companies, these AI research institutions were putting out their papers to explain, oh, we scraped this, we scraped that, or this. Like the Lyon database is interesting in particular because it doesn't actually include images. It only includes links to the images of where they're hosted online. And so if you look at the court filing, the complaint then is saying, well, the copying came by when the companies made copies to their local machines or servers to train the models. So that's the act of infringement, is that copying. And so it's important, and so from my standpoint, I think a lot of these lawsuits are based off of the research that has been put out. And that's why I think we're also seeing all this massive lobbying that had been going on up until literally days ago when the EU finalized their EU AI Act. There's an obligation to disclose copyrighted material that is included in your database in the EU. And so that's the model I think we're going to see from regulators around the globe now, is to have the similar obligations, because that's really how you have transparency. That's really how you hold people accountable and have ethical AI, which is a pillar of responsible AI. Yeah, sorry.
I saw a question down there. Is there a hand up?
I'm not just stretching.
Oh, that's all right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Since you're looking at it. The Tennessee legislation, is that legislation also in the packet? And do you recall who the co-sponsors are?
Yes, I do not know. The only thing that's in the packet, this is fairly recently, so the only thing that's in the packet is that informational piece that there's organizations here in Tennessee, BMI, all ASCAP, CSAC, the GMA, the CMA, trying to get the message out.
But
so
has the actual legislation been introduced with co-sponsors?
It's my understanding it has.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to make sure that we actually get a link to the actual legislation.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get it.
Since I kind of work in that space, I kind of like to be aware of it.
Yes.
Things take forever everywhere. The other, I now find myself as a curator in the corporate environment, and have worked even with Tennessee College of Art students on some work that we're doing at one of our developments. And we've been able to create just a very simple one sheet to not only help the artists understand that they are, when they sell a piece, that they still own the underlying work, but that also they're representing and warranting that they are actually the artists that created it. And I think that is something new as well for folks that are representing, whether you're curating art for a hotel lobby or for whatever commercial environment, that whenever you're buying that art, you actually know that you're buying it for the artist that you think you are.
Yeah, there's actually, I'm hearing from fellow illustrators that in their contracts now, their publishers are saying, you are telling us you are not using AI because then we can be held liable. So that is changing. It's in our contracts now, generally.
And the other contractual point too is like conveying ownership. If you're using a generative tool, you arguably have no ownership. I've seen that actually be a reason why a client didn't pay someone is because they used Midjourney, and they were like, well, you're not actually conveying any ownership. When you look at the terms and conditions of Midjourney, all they give you as a free user is a CC license, Creative Commons license.
It becomes more complicated with a visual artist that uses collage as what, because they're grabbing and creating from all different sources, and so even though they're creating what we would in the good old days just reasonably assume that it's a derivative work, now it's like, or is it, and so the buyer wants to protect themselves from if they screwed up, the artist needs to make sure that they're also protecting themselves in the right way. So I think that there's multiple layers there people should think about.
And the content authenticity initiative is another one you can look into. Adobe's part of it, I know, but Nikon has it's basically developing a standard for ensuring that there is authenticity behind any content. And Nikon, for example, is one of the manufacturers that has integrated the technology. Whenever you use one of their cameras, it will be part of the metadata. Things like that, we're starting to see industry standards develop around it as well.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. If I can see hands up. Bonnie?
Kelly, hi, Bonnie from the Porch. Obviously, as a local art nonprofit, we are sympathetic to your journey, and we'd love to help support you. So how can we do that?
Oh, thanks for asking.
So the question was, how can we support artists like Kelly?
Yeah. Well, so when people ask me that, I actually like to point them to a GoFundMe from the Concept Art Association. They are working really hard to get artists like Carla Ortiz, my fellow plaintiff, in front of Congress to talk about our issues. As far as helping individual artists, it's really, I found for me just spreading awareness of my story and how I'm just one artist out of thousands who have had this happen to them. And just spreading awareness of, hey, these really fun image generators you've been playing with, there's a dark side. But just supporting, supporting a local artist, supporting independent artists. It's been a really hard time for us to make ends meet lately. So yeah, that's really all I can say to that.
Well, it is almost Christmas season. If we can go to your website and buy a print.
I'm to the Hunter Taylor Arts Market this weekend. I will be there vending, but also obviously a whole bunch of local artists will be there. But yeah, I know everybody really appreciates when their work is supported. It makes a big difference.
One last question, yes.
I just want to thank you guys. I'm an artist. I also started an arts organization that's 22 years old that has 180 artists that operates in Nashville. And I just think that artists are the soul of the world. And if you don't protect them, you don't have a world. So thank you.
What's your organization called?
The Chestnut Group. They're
Chestnut.
American painters, and we raise money for conservation efforts. So it's saving the planet and doing art.
And before we close, I just wanted to give a couple of notes. So, I have to do this with my Director of Education hat at the Porch. The Porch, so please check us out at porchtn.org. We just launched our spring classes. We have over 50 in-person classes, 40 virtual ones, 40 events. We're going to celebrate our 10th year anniversary. Ross Gay is coming, if you know of him. Let's write together without ChatGPT. And please support us and the work that we do. And ABC, they have a few exciting things coming up too. So the Volunteer Lawyers and Professionals for the Arts, VLPA. This program exists as a service to help income-qualified artists with art-related business and legal matters. So be on the lookout for that. Also, ABC.
As a law student, I volunteered with the VLPA, and it was an amazing organization. So if you are a lawyer, take a moment to look at their website, see how you can contribute your time and efforts to their organization as well.
Thank you. No, and ABC also helps coordinate a monthly Black-owned small business and nonprofit legal clinic. Registration's open for the January 18th clinic, and this is for businesses that are at least 51% Black-owned, have 10 employees or fewer, have an income below $1 million, and have Tennessee residency. Last but not least, the ABC and the Porch were collaborating again for another panel in February called Paths to Publishing. This will happen at Parnassus Bookstore, which is a lovely, lovely bookstore if you haven't been. This will happen on February 23rd, 2024. Registration can be found on either the Porch or the ABC websites, and registration is open to all members of either organizations and the public. And attorneys, if you're getting your CLEs, please submit your form at the end. And I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. Let's hear their names again. Kelly McKernan, Lynn Morrow, Carla, Christina, Contreras, and Franklin Graves. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I actually have a movie out in theaters right now called The Shift. It's with Sean Astin, Neil McDonough. It was actually crowdfunded by 6,000 funders. So it's a new day for artists.
Great. And thank you, Yurina,
Thank you so much.